I'm Joy Morris, inviting you to listen to True Stories of the Old West, hosted by C.R. King, a production of RK Enterprises.
Hello everybody, C.R. King here. Today we're going to talk about old Los Angeles and why it was called the toughest town on the frontier. Northern California helped cause the problem. We all know about the gold rush and the 49ers. Well, the malcontents, the failures from up there, from the goldfields, came down to Los Angeles during the 1850s. And this became the city's darkest hour. Only the hour lasted for 20 years. For 2 decades, LA enjoyed the doubtful reputation of being the toughest frontier town. Its vigilantes, known as Rangers, lynched 4 times as many as the more famous vigilantes of San Francisco. One reason was that the undesirables driven out of that city found its way down to Los Angeles. The local committee, therefore, had more material to work on. Now, what does this mean? Well, let's start with the leadership. The skilled leadership was Don Andre Pico, Jose Cabrillo, and other Mexican Americans. It did its work more thoroughly. There were 37 lynchings compared to 40 legal hangings during the 2 decades. Mayor Stephen Foster is, in one instance, resigned his office so he could lead the mob to lynch a murderer who was about to escape justice through a technicality. Conditions became so bad between 1850 and 1870 that crime ceased to be news. Here's an example from a newspaper. Last Sunday, and this is a quote, last Sunday night was a brisk night for killings. 4 men were shot and killed, and several wounded in shooting affrays. That's as far as they went. No other details. Here's another example, and again we quote, a party of Salt Lake and Montana Teamsters had a lively row in the Monte on Monday night. Several shots were fired, from the effects of which 1 man died. And here's the third and last quote for this talk. The coroner's jury sat on the body of a dead Indian. The verdict was death from intoxication or by visitation from God. End of quote. Incredible. Now, on a religion point of view, the Methodists, Presbyterians, Episcopalians abandoned Los Angeles as hopelessness. It was hopeless to be there. I could go on with this, but let me just put it this way. All 3 churches, within 2 years, gave up and left LA for good. In courtroom proceedings, it got out of hand. If the attorneys disagreed on both sides of the table, it would turn into a fist fight between them. Often they would throw inkwells and chairs at each other. There was no real justice in Los Angeles. There was one time when the Judge Dreyer, William Dreyer to be exact, was holding court, and it got so bad between the lawyers that were throwing the inkwells, canes, chairs, you name it, that the judge ran to his chambers and he yelled out, "Shoot away! Damn you, shoot away! And the hell with all of you!" End of quote. All bad things come to an end, just like all good things come to an end. Now, this was the shocker, and I've written about this. We talked about it before. 1871, on October 4th, there was what they call today the Chinese massacre. A mob of 500 searching for a Chinese criminal in Cala de Negro, the alley. Within a few hours, lynched 8 19 innocent Chinese and looted Chinatown. The enormity of this outrage seemed to bring the city out of its debauch of 20 years. The reaction even brought a Sunday closing law. The lawlessness of the time, of course, was not entirely chargeable to the gold rush. It had its beginnings in the interval between Mexican and American authority. There was great confusion between the two different laws, and it took a while for it to be settled. Another issue were the Indians. The American Indians were in poverty. They were in squalor near the city. They tried to forget their miseries every Saturday night and Sunday in Casa de Negro alley, just off the plaza. They would drink themselves unconscious, be dragged into jail. They would be bailed out, and they would have to pay the farmer or the rancher who bailed them out by working them for the week. And often, that farmer or rancher would give them booze when they released them from their obligation. And they repeated, and they repeated, and they repeated, and so many died. It was terrible. So terrible that it lasted until the Indians were all but dead. They went out rapidly under such a hideous system. A little more perspective of this. The Chinese massacre was horrendous. The whole country knew about this. It was terrible. The fact that also that Indians were taken advantage of, and they kept them drunk so they could continue to be bailed out to work off the bail, and then they give them alcohol instead of money to live on. Boom, they're dead. How bad can you be? Now, the other part I mentioned was the fact that we just took over the country. The Anglo-Saxons. There was two different rule of government, the Mexican and the Americans, and there was a clash there. It had to be straightened out, and it got straightened out, but it caused a lot of problems. Don't worry, Los Angeles grew out of it. 1855, the first public school was built on 2nd and Spring Street. The year after that, in 85, St. Vincent College was founded. It is now called Loyola University. 2 years later, a building was erected on the campus of 6th and Broadway. In 1857, Wells Fargo opened an express office. Now, on a religion point of view, the Methodists, Presbyterians, Episcopalians abandoned Los Angeles as hopelessness. It was hopeless to be there. The first domination was represented for 5 years, beginning in 1853, with a little adobe building near Baker Square, where a school, as well as a church, was conducted. I could go on with this, but let me just put it this way. All three churches, within 2 years, gave up and left LA for good. 1872, the library was established. The city was growing, but there were shootings and stabbings every single day, it appears, in old Los Angeles. Okay, everybody, that's about it. I just gave you a taste of the history. Know this, every town, every state, every country has its dark period. And Los Angeles was no different than New York or Dallas, Texas, or Fort Worth, or what have you. Take care. See you next time. Stay out of trouble, and please, be safe.
Stay tuned for next week's tale.